So let's start with this. These reports just coming out overnight that Sajid Javid is going to promise a new UK visa to immigrants looking to start new businesses. They want to continue to attract tech entrepreneurs. I guess you'd say that that's a good thing. Are there other parts of industry that would also like these kind of visas, though? Absolutely right. In manufacturing, we've got 2.5 million employees in the manufacturing sector in the UK. About 330,000 of those are EU nationals. And since January, we've seen a real drying up of those people willing to come to the UK as the uncertainty around Brexit is getting closer and closer. And so, really, other ways of encouraging those people into our sector is very important. Give us some numbers around that concern. How worried is business? How worried are the businesses that you represent about access to talent? Well, number one on every survey is all about skills. We are short of skills in this country. We have been for a long time. And so plugging the gap, particularly at the technician level and the medium level, not the high engineers and not the low-paid end, but in the middle of that, has been really the focus of where EU nationals have been filling that gap in the UK for the last 10 or 15 years. And to see that flow drying up is very concerning to businesses. Many manufacturers have got fairly full order books at this stage. It's looking good. So capacity strengths, some of those are driven by the shortage of skills and labour. Matt?
Well, you know, I have to say, I'll preface this with the statement that I think London is one of the greatest cities in the world. I think British people are very intelligent and well-educated, and I admire the British people for their willingness to get paid so little to live in such an expensive economy. But I can't imagine under any way that I would start a business now in, you know, pre-Brexit Britain. It just doesn't make any sense. Why on earth would anyone want to do that?
Well, obviously there are a lot of reasons why it's still a very good place. The innovation in the UK is particularly a strong facet of our industrial base here. But the point is, and the point you make is a very valid one, that we do need clarity around Brexit, where we're going. We've been now 2 years into this debate, and with the government, we still don't have a clear view as to the way forward, and that is deterring investment. And, of course, that includes the start-up of new high-tech businesses. How clean a break do your members want to see, then? Or does it depend on what they sell and to whom? Well, a lot of the UK manufacturing base is highly integrated with the rest of Europe. 50% of the exports to the EU are manufactured products, and a lot of this is almost inseparable in the supply chain terms from indigenous manufacturing to those in Europe. What we want to see is as little disruption to that as possible. So as close to the customs union as possible? Whatever we want to call it is fine, but the output of that needs to be very similar trading arrangements to where we sit now. Otherwise, there'll be a completely different approach to investment in this country. Is it the tariffs that matter to your members? Is it the common standards that matter? Is it no delays at the border that matter? You know, it's all of those things. This is why this is a very complex issue, and we are running out of time to get that clarity. So we're pressing hard with the government. And, of course, not only, you know, it's not about criticising the government so much as about working with them to ensure that we get as much of that detail ironed out in the coming weeks now as possible. It's very important.
So are you confident that post-Brexit, the British people will be able to regulate themselves better than the EU has done for them over the past 20 years?
Well, we've had 40 years, actually, of integration with the EU, and that's developed a very comprehensive system there. A shock to the system would be a sudden dislocation of that regulatory framework. So there needs to be a very smooth, slow transition away from it. Otherwise, there will be some significant effects on UK business. In terms of standards and EU standards regimes, I've been reading this week about whether the UK will apply to stay in an EU standards regime, which is run, I understand, independently, separately from the actual EU infrastructure. How would that go down with members? Do members want us to stay within that regime? And would they then lose the ability to sell abroad, outside the EU, I mean? Right. So the standards, the product standards and the safety standards around products are part of the international system of organisations. And our role in that is we have a national accreditation authority here, a standard-setting body, the BSI, and they're part of the European standard-setting framework. So that's been settled down over a number of years. The most difficult thing is for manufacturers to have to produce to different standards. So sticking with the international standards approach is critical going forwards. It's good to see this week that certainly the Secretary of State for Business has confirmed that we will push ahead and stay within that standards framework, because that enables manufacturers not to have the complexity of having to make different standards for different markets.